remember your earliest childhood dreams? What you aspired to be, or perhaps what you really did not want to be? I still remember my brother watching the rubbish trucks, wishing that he could be a bin man. Everything that we are exposed to, all the experiences that we have, shape us into the people that we are, here, today, right now. One little girl, like many around her, dreamed of becoming a famous Hollywood movie star. And she had her big break at the age of 7, when she was cast as the lead character for her school play, The Firebird. She was so excited. She saw this as the start of a glittering career, until her teacher told her that she would no longer be playing the Firebird, but would be the silver tree instead. An avid ballerina, the little girl questioned why she was no longer the dancing lead. And the teacher told her, well, Sarah has the right colour hair, just like the Firebird. And the little girl replied, well, I may not have the right colour hair, but I'm not silver either. And so I was painted silver and forced to stand motionless for all 20 minutes of the play. My dreams of Hollywood shattered, and I became a lawyer instead. That day, I learned that I would need to accept being treated differently because of the way that I look. But more importantly, 40 other children in my class learned that it would be okay to treat someone differently because of the way that they look. Today, I'd like to share with you some of my experiences in this thing called life. Experiences that have contributed to me standing here in front of you. I want to talk to you about the realities faced by some in terms of participating in sport. I want to show you how sport is changing diversity in the boardroom. And finally, I want to open your minds to the possibility of what if.
Rowena, please join us.
Hi.
I've had the benefit of watching all of that TED talk, and it's really insightful. But bring us up to speed. Tell us the rest of your story, and in particular how sport intervened then, and what you've ended up doing.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Well, I started my life as a sprinter. Grew up in London, the child of immigrant parents, from a big sports family, actually, in Sri Lanka. But I was also very privileged to go to Millfield, which is a very famous sports school. And so I had this experience of inner city London, and then also Millfield, and then I also ran for England.
Very different environment.
Very different environment. And then representing the UK, representing Sri Lanka as well. So really felt very fortunate, and that difference. I also saw firsthand, more often than not, girls and ethnic minorities dropping out of sports because of the decisions that they had to make that I was very privileged not to have to make. My father had pushed us that we can play sport, but we needed to study alongside that, and I was given the opportunity to do that. But it really, really impacted me to the extent that today, every decision that I make have been from that moment of being a 17-year-old. And it took me a long time to sort of recognize the barriers that I faced in the process. I think I sort of, even telling that story, which was one of many, I really shied away from it. I was really determined that I was going to forge my own path and not blame anybody else for not doing anything. But then I realized that actually, if we don't use our platform to talk about it, there's many of my friends, people I come into contact, don't know that these are the experiences that I've had to face and overcome. And actually now what we need to do is raise awareness of this so that it doesn't happen to other people, I guess.
And so what was it about the process of competing at a pretty good level? And it wasn't just sprinting, because there's a whole load of other sport that you've just... What is it about the process of competing against yourself or the environment that has helped you?
So the basis of that talk was that sport teaches you it's so much more than just playing sport. It teaches you really important life skills. So confidence, teamwork, leadership skills, the ability to learn to fail. It's something that, I really remember losing my first netball match at the age of 8 and being devastated. And after that, you don't. You sort of, you pick yourself up, you focus on why you lost something, and you learn from it and move on. You don't really learn from winning, actually. And so for a lot of people who've never experienced that feeling of loss and what you do with that, the first time you lose is in some major transaction that can be devastating and destabilizing. So it teaches you that, but for me the biggest thing was the resilience, the ability to get back up, get back out there and improve. And that's, for me, especially in my world, every time I face barriers, it's that resilience that I'm not going to let this isn't going to stop me. I'm going to keep going. And now I'm in startup world. That resilience has really come to the forefront. So.
And so let's just fill in the blanks on that. Fast forwards, startups, corporate law, working oftentimes in sport. There's a direct path there.
Totally. I mean, sport, and especially sports law, is very, very white male still, and especially at leadership levels. I'm very often the only woman in a room still. More often than not, the only minority. Usually, the only minority woman.
Yeah.
And for a long time, I think I used it as probably a challenge. I really sort of sometimes found it amusing when people underestimated me. I've been asked to make the tea when I've walked into rooms before, and then sort of the look on people's faces when they realise I'm running the meeting.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talk about this almost in jest, but actually, these experiences can be really damaging.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think if I hadn't had that grounding, that confidence, that base that sport gave me, I probably wouldn't have been able to cope with those situations. I think that was really what helped me personally, and why I believe I've succeeded, because of that, of those skills.
So let's flip this then. If this is what kind of you have learned from sport, you're now in the corporate space. What does the corporate space need to learn from your journey and from sport?
My challenge is that why are we've been talking about this for years. I think Martin Luther King's speech was 65 plus years ago now, whatever it was. When Black Lives Matter happened, it became a focus, and my feelings were always like, why? And again, I did a lot of self-evaluation. I was like, I've always focused on me as a woman. Why haven't I been talking about my ethnicity? Why haven't I been sharing that story? And I was scared of playing the race card. That's the reality of it.
Being scared of being accused of playing the
yes,
race card.
Exactly.
Not
doing it.
But you wanted to point out the inequity.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was the sort of it was a moment for me as well personally, and that's when I realised that actually I had to talk about my journey more. Even telling my friends, as I mentioned, I think so many people weren't aware of the inherent institutional racism I'd felt right from school. Really quite distressing things that had happened, all the way through to when I still sit in a meeting today. Every day, I sort of say this statement that every time I meet someone, people whether they're aware of it, they make a judgment, whether conscious or not, about me, my experience, their ability to interact with me. And sometimes they'll internalize that, but sometimes they'll externalize that, and that can be in words, actions. And it's something that I've got used to, but we need to change that, because there's a lot of talk around how do we diversify leadership. We make it more welcoming, we make it more inclusive, and that means changing these microaggressions, stopping those. How do we do that? By being aware of our own unconscious biases. And again, I did the work. I did some of these, the Harvard unconscious bias tests, which are brilliant, and I did the one on gender roles. And given that I was...
Even you, what did it reveal about your own
Yeah, I mean,
biases?
I was raised by a full-time working mother. I'm obviously driven, a career woman. I was biased in favor of men being the breadwinners and women favoring looking after the family. And I was
Surprise
gobsmacked.
yourself.
Totally. And then I took a step back and I realized, well, I was constantly watching television programs in the 80s where it was 2.4 children, white middle-class families, the father going to work. And that's all drummed into us so that we don't even realize it. So when people often make statements like, I'm not racist, or I'm not sexist, or I don't see you as being different, my question's always like, well, how do you know? Have you bothered to do the work, to understand how it feels to be a woman of color in our world and in our environment, which is very much geared to a certain group of people.
And of course, the discussion really now is encouraging people to see and understand difference. If you don't see me in everything that I am, then you don't see me, you don't understand me.
Yeah, I mean, people used to say to me, oh, but we don't see you as being different. And I was like, well, A, what does different mean? But B, also, by the way, I'm really proud of my Sri Lankan heritage. I'm a dual national. I sat on the Sports Council of Sri Lanka as well. I still do a lot for the country. Yes, I was born in Britain. I'm very English. But that heritage is a really important part of me. And, I don't want anyone to ever see me as being a minority woman. But the experiences that I've had because of that is what gives me my diversity. So all those things, that example, that story, they have driven me to make the decisions I make, to fight for the things that are important for me. And that's why I have a very different viewpoint to other people.
And so this drives the work that you are doing to use sport to unlock the potential of little girls that could be like you.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't just little girls. It's, it's...
Sorry.
Yeah. No. I mean, the TED Talk is based on women because that's the research that's been done. And a big part of that was, like I've said, actually, I want to do research around all diversity groups. Because actually, is there a correlation between South Asians or black or disabled people playing sport and then naturally progressing to positions of leadership? I really am very anti-quotas because I find them disempowering and almost like people are waiting for you to fail. Whereas if there's a natural progression, and that's where I think if there was, the research that I used was that 94% of female C-suite executives played sport. So is that how we drive natural change in leadership through making sport truly inclusive?
Sure. I just want to flip that question very quickly before we get Chris on. We're going to talk to him, then we're going to come to you guys. I'm not sure if you heard Gillian, who was speaking a moment ago from Picture. One of the points she made, this is about leadership, by the way. There is a point to my question I'm about to ask. So if the link you made, lots of C-suite people have played sport. We're talking about unlocking the potential of athletes to take leadership roles, campaigning, social justice, environmentalism, whatever that might be. The point Gillian made was, we had a snowboarder and a mountain biker who are using their platforms. Yep. What about the tennis players? What about the golfers? What about the footballers? You work in that wider world. How do we get more Marcus Rashfords to take a stand?
I mean, we as an industry have been largely to blame for this, by the way. So for the Olympics,
we being
sports industry,
right?
Olympics, and I was in charge of this for a lot of the major sports events. We didn't allow athletes. It was again to protect commercial programs, so you couldn't wear your own sponsor branding and things like that. But equally, we didn't allow athletes to make political statements. Sport was always supposed to be neutral, non-political. But 1980s Olympics, a lot of British and American athletes boycotted Moscow.
And then they didn't come to LA.
Exactly. So there's always been these undertones, but we said no political statements. So we've almost suppressed the athlete voice. But actually now what we've seen, and I think social media has a lot to do with that, athletes are finding their voice and they're feeling stronger and more empowered. And now there's a real shift in actually saying, yeah, you're right. We should be using your voices because you're incredibly influential and incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. For things that are important to you as well. Mm-hmm. And that's where that authenticity, I work on the commercial side of sport, and it's a real challenge to make sure you're authentically selling a product. Same things for causes that are important to you. How do you build authenticity into that? It's genuinely what you're passionate about. I am genuinely passionate about changing diversity at leadership. So it means that I can sit here and talk to you all about something that is really important to me. Exactly the same for athletes.